Hello and welcome to West Ham Denmark podcast, your home for cloud and blue passion straight from Scandinavia. Today it's a special one. We're joined by a man who knows more behind the scene West Ham news than most people ever will. A legend in the fan community, the voice of inside updates, and someone whose name has become a part of modern West Ham culture. The one and only ex-West Ham employee. Ex,
Wow.
welcome, welcome.
What an introduction, mate. Thank you. I'll definitely come back again after you said all those nice things, that's for sure.
And also, as usual, Philip, welcome.
I needed the same kind of introduction at that point. I feel like that's kind of unfair at this point.
You'll get that next week. Philip,
I'm excited to hear that.
It's been a while, Philip. We have had the international break. So, how's the mood?
It's all right. Denmark didn't do too well, but West Ham did all right. It's a bit of a mixed bag, I think. I've been having a lot of normal university work also, so just getting it all all right. Just
Yep.
making it through the day, you know.
Okay, enough about you. Let's talk to the guy that we've been waiting to talk to. X. So glad that you're here. And yeah, are you ready for some questions?
Yeah, but I think Philip's going to have more of an interesting story. Let's ask him it.
Okay, let's do this. X, how did you first get involved in covering West Ham news? And yeah, how did the name X come about?
Good question. So, how do I put this in a nutshell?
Mm.
I try and make it as brief as I can without boring people. But basically, I used to be a football coach for children, like under 11s football, and we did really well. One year with quite a small team, we got to basically the London finals, and then through that, I got asked to be the district manager. So obviously London's divided into different districts, and I was asked to be Redbridge and Waltham Forest district manager when I was quite young, maybe 22, 23, something like that. And we did really well as well. And so I started to get some really good players for me. And West Ham came and watched quite a few of the games, and they would say to me, "Who's the best player?" And obviously I'm a West Ham fan, so I'd say that guy there and that guy there. And then when Tottenham or Chelsea or Arsenal turned up, they'd say to me, "Who's the best player?" I'd go, "Not those two, that one over there, over there." So I think West Ham started to get on the idea that I was a big fan and I was trying to help them and stuff. So eventually they gave me like kits to give to the children and tickets to matches and stuff like that. So I built up a bit of a friendship with quite a few people in the club, and then it sort of like just came like sort of ticked about in the background, and then one day I was at work just doing my normal 9 to 5 job, and I was talking to another West Ham fan there, and he said, "Oh, have you heard the latest news? I've just seen it on Twitter. West Ham are signing somebody. I can't remember who it was," and it was just completely untrue. And I knew it wasn't true because obviously I had contacts in the club, and I said, "That's rubbish, mate. That's not true. I don't know where they're getting that from." And then it kept happening, and he kept saying, "This is happening. This is happening." And I went, "Mate, I hate to break it to you, but this is not happening. It's not true." And he said, "How comes you know so much about West Ham?" And I said, "I just know a few people in the club that tell me things." And he was like, "Well, why don't you start a Twitter account and tell West Ham fans what is actually happening?" And then I was like, "Oh no, I'm not into that sort of stuff. No, I can't be bothered." And he was like, "Go on, let's do it. Let's set one up." So we sat there and we thought about a name, and we were like, "What can we call it? We can't just call it West Ham Sauce because that's a bit boring. We can't just call it like my name. We have to think of something." And he said, "Didn't you used to do a bit of work for the club?" And I was like, "Well, kind of a bit." And he was like, "Why don't you call yourself like former West Ham employee or ex-West Ham employee?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do ex-West Ham employee and see what happens." So we had the name, and then the first bit of news I ever put out was that Joe Cole, if you remember back to the was returning to West Ham from Liverpool. I think he was at the time. So that was the first thing, and I knew it because I know Joe's family a little bit, and I knew a few people in the club, so I knew it was definitely happening. So on my Twitter, the first thing I ever posted was, "West Ham fans, Joe Cole will be returning to the club." And funnily enough, he just scored for Liverpool against West Ham, and so I was like, "Don't worry, he'll be back at West Ham." And everyone was like, "No, you're talking rubbish." And then obviously in about I don't know, a week's time or whatever, he signed for West Ham. And then the next one
Amazing.
was George McCartney. So he came back from Sunderland, I think, from memory. And I told everyone that was going to happen, and it did happen. So because I called those two transfers, everyone was like, oh, hold on a minute, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. So I got about 1,000 followers quite quickly. And I said to my mate, look, I've done my time now. This is it. I've shown I can do it. I'm going to stop. And he's like, no, go on. See if you can get to 2,000. So I was like, oh, go on then. So I did a bit more, and I got to 2,000. And I was like, right, I'm going to stop now, mate. And he's like, no, see if you can get to 3,000. And he just kept raising the amount I was meant to get to. And in the end, it became quite addictive. And it became a challenge for me to sort of see how many I could get. And then by the time I knew it, quite quickly I was up to about 10,000, and I was starting to get newspapers and Sky and radio shows and various other people asking me what's going on at West Ham. I thought, wow, this is quite interesting. And then people in the club would start to contact me. Players started to contact me and said, how do you know what's going on? And I thought, wow, this is crazy. So I just kept it going. And here I am, 13 years later, still doing it as a full-time job alongside being a football agent now, which is quite a crazy turn of events, really.
Wow,
amazing. Can I add a follow-up?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you talked about knowing the families of Joe Cole, and I know Declan Rice's family, and I know I think some of the youth that's coming up right now. How much do you worry about the news you put out by knowing the families involved? Do you get extra careful when you actually know the people behind the news?
Yeah. That's a good question, mate. So, as you've said, and I'll back it up, I've actually spoke to Declan Rice on the phone today. Funnily, that you should mention him, because obviously he played brilliantly against Bayern Munich yesterday, didn't he? So, and he's just absolutely smashing it. I mean, obviously, it's sad as for us as West Ham fans that he no longer plays for us, but from a personal level, I consider him quite a good friend of mine. So I was texting him earlier saying, how good he was and stuff. We were just having a bit of a joke. And so it's funny, you should mention him, but he and I are really close. And then obviously when he was leaving West Ham, particularly to join at the time either Arsenal or Manchester City, I had to be very careful what I put out. So every day I was speaking to him and I was speaking to his dad, and I was just checking which bits of information I was allowed to say and whether it was accurate or not. The problem I had is that quite a few West Ham accounts didn't like Declan Rice at the time, because obviously they were upset that he was leaving West Ham. So anything I said, they were twisting to sort of fit their kind of narrative against him. And I'm not going to name these West Ham accounts, but you can probably guess some of them. I'm not asking you to name them either, but I bet you can guess.
I can name a few. I can name a few.
Yeah, exactly. So I was sitting there and I was saying, I didn't say that. And I'd get a phone call from Declan who'd say, mate, why are you saying this? And I'd be like, fella, I did not say that. They've twisted my words again. And he was like, right, we need to make sure that everything you say we check. So I just went back and forth with him. And I think sometimes I do that. If I know that, like you say, I know quite a lot of the youth team players. I did know quite a few of the senior players quite recently. A lot of them have left in the last couple of years, but I know a lot of the youth players as well. And whenever it's a story about them, I will always double check it. I always say to them, listen, mate, I've got this story that you're coming back from injury, or you are injured, or you're leaving West Ham or whatever. And they'll say, okay, you can put it out, but just make sure you say this or that. So yeah, I do check my news when I know the people, and a lot of my news I do check with the club, because again, if it's about an academy player, I know a lot of the staff in the academy. If it's about a first team player, then I know coaches in the first team, or I know players. So a lot of the time I check my news. So I always find it funny when, you get trolls online and they're like, oh, he's talking bullshit. And I think, actually, do you know what? I've spoke to the actual person that I'm talking about. But obviously I can't say that, but yes, that. So I do check what I put out if I know the person. And I think sometimes I can be a little bit obvious if I know the person. So, for example, Connor Coventry, I know really well. I used to praise him a lot when he was at West Ham, because I know his family. I know Aaron Cresswell quite well. So I used to praise him a lot. So I think sometimes I give it away a little bit when I praise certain players, but I try to be neutral as well, because obviously I'm a West Ham fan at the end of the day, and I can't say, oh wow, how amazing. I don't know how amazing that Danny Ings has been for the club when really he hasn't. So I have to have an element of truth, but yeah, as well as protecting my friends and sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of Danny Ings, he's kind of a cult hero in this podcast, but
Yeah.
definitely
Is
another
he?
story. Okay,
Yeah.
but I think many supporters view you as one of the more reliable West Ham insiders. So how do you work with your sources? Are you getting that big that the club comes to you, or do you still have
I think
to?
you need to rephrase the question about one of the most reliable,
You're
the most reliable.
definitely the most reliable West
I
Ham.
can't name a better one. I can't name a better one.
Yeah, gonna
My
say
bad,
who's
my
my
bad.
competition?
So how,
I'm not going to
No,
name other podcasts or
no,
anything. That wouldn't be very nice, you know?
okay,
No,
but
no, no. I'm only teasing. I'm only joking.
I know, I
So
know.
how do I get? How did I become reliable? Right. Basically, to be blunt, I know a lot
Mm,
of people, in the club, but not just in the club. I know people because I'm a football agent myself. So football agents talk. And
mm,
they know what's going on with transfers, and they know what's going on in clubs because they've got their own sources. So, through being a football agent and for also being, having a lot of friends in the club, I just talk to a lot of people, and I never, ever, ever put any news out that I've not checked with at least two people, and that's what I always say. I always verify my news, so sometimes I might not always be first, but you know that I've checked it with two or three people before I say something, and then so therefore, if I say something, it's going to be accurate because if it's say a player transfer. I'll try and check with the player or the agent themselves. I'll check with someone in the boardroom that would be actioning the sale. I'll check with someone that's involved in like secretary involved in the process. I check with someone that's involved in the medical. So I check with so many people that if three or four people are saying the same thing, then I know it has to be accurate.
yeah. Have you ever faced any some sort of pressure or backlash from the club because of
Yes.
something you reported?
Yeah, lots, mate. Lots. So again, I have to work with the club more now. Like when I first started, I was a little bit more rogue, should I say, and I didn't check things with the club so much, and it got me into a bit of trouble because they were like, "Who is this guy, and how does he know so much?"
Hmm.
So in the end, I did get, and I've had it recently. I've done a couple of articles or a couple of bits of news, and people in the club have messaged me and said, we'd rather that wasn't out, or we'd rather that was said differently. So I will, in respect to the club, I will take it down. I will change it. I will put a different point of view on certain things if they need me to. So that's the thing. I always work with the club, and now so in the past maybe I was a bit of a troublesome to them, but now I actually work with them. And for example, if I hear of a story breaking that I think is going to be quite negative about West Ham, then I'll give them the heads up. So an example I can think of is that I knew that Lucas Paquetá's betting stuff was going to come out. I'd heard about it in football circles. I knew it was a thing. I knew that betting companies were, had submitted evidence and stuff. So I spoke to the club. I called the club up and I said, look, I don't know if you know anything about this, but I've heard that this is going to happen with him and it's going to go in the main press in the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks or whatever. I'm giving you the heads up that this is going to happen. And they actually, I don't know if they knew or not at the time, but they were like, thank you, we really appreciate that, thanks for giving us the heads up. And I'll do the same. Like, if I hear of other stuff like that, or I hear a journalist is going to run a negative article about West Ham, I'll say to them, look, I think this journalist is going to run a story about, whatever it may be, and then they'll go, okay, thank you. And so we sort of work together a bit like that now.
Yeah, so actually giving them a chance to do some damage control before it all happens.
Exactly, mate, exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to add a question because I know you've mentioned it on your own podcast before, but there must also be like stories that never get out, but you know of them that you just don't tell for obvious
Yeah.
reasons because it would be damaging to the club or to the player or someone involved. Could you just, without, you don't need to mention the story because it's probably not out, but how do you decide that things just don't get out?
It's a very good question, mate. It's a tough one at times because ultimately, how I made my name is by breaking West Ham news and being hopefully one of the first or the most accurate to do it. And then when you hear a story and you think, okay, this story's big, this is really big. If I put it out there, well, I'm going to get more patrons, or I'm going to get, the credit or whatever it may be. And I sit and I think, oh gosh, what do I do with this? So more often than not, if I think it's negative, I'll speak to the club and I'll say, look, I've got this story. I don't know. I don't know whether you're comfortable with me running it or not, but this is the story I've got. And then they'll say, do you know what? You can run it because it's going to come out anyway. Or they'll say, no, do you know what? We don't want that out there yet. Can you hold off? And I will. And sometimes it can be frustrating because another journalist or another ITK or whatever might get hold of the story and then put it out as their exclusive. And I think, do you know what? I knew that 3 days ago. And I can't then say, oh, shut up. I knew that 3 days ago, because they'll say, well, why didn't you put it out? And I'll say, because I didn't want to. And they go, yeah, bullshit. So I have to juggle with that. But it's much better for me to keep a good relationship with the club, with the players that I know, with other journalists, whoever it may be, than to try and get the odd exclusive here and there. So yeah, there's been plenty of times when big stories haven't gone out, like, without meaning to sort of give a bit of a teaser to you guys. I'm sitting on quite a big one now, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to put it out just yet. And so it will probably come out eventually. And what I tend to do sometimes, just for a bit of evidence, is that I'll send Dave, who I obviously do the podcast with, I'll send him a DM on Twitter, and I'll do it on WhatsApp, and I'll do it on Instagram, and I'll say, listen, mate, I've got this bit of news, but the club have asked me not to run it, so I'm just putting it in writing, so that if anyone goes, you don't know, you've lost your sources, then I can say, actually, no, here's the evidence, but I just chose not to put it out. But yeah, it does happen quite a lot, to be honest, and ultimately, I'm a big West Ham fan. I might report West Ham news, but if that stopped tomorrow, I'd still be a big West Ham fan. I'm more of a West Ham fan than I am an ITK or whatever. So I don't want to put out negative stuff about West Ham unnecessarily. So I try to protect the club, and I try to do what's right for the club, to put the club in a good light rather than put them in a negative light.
Cool.
Makes sense, yeah.
We'll just take a short break, and then we'll be back with more Q&A with X. So X, can we get your view on the West Ham transfer strategy in recent years?
If you really want to, but yeah, it's not too positive at the moment. I think we've wasted a lot of money on players that we shouldn't have signed. I think ultimately the people that are in charge of those transfers, so Tim Stuyton especially, is who I'm looking at, but maybe a few others as well. But I think we recruited quite poorly. You've got to think we signed Nicholas Fulkirk for 25 million or whatever it was. And we need to sort our forward situation out, and we go and sign a 32-year-old that's got an injury record, and as per usual, he's now injured pretty much all the time and has flopped. And then we've spent 20 odd million on Guilherme, who's barely played, 40 million on Max Kilman, which looks too much. 35 onto Debo, which, all right, he's played quite well the last few games, but on the whole, he hasn't been that good. Rodriguez, that didn't work. Carlos Soler, all right, he was okay, but again, it was quite an expensive loan, and we didn't get that much out of it. And I think, you look at our forwards, that's the thing that worries me the most. West Ham have needed a new centre forward since probably before you were born. Looking at you, Phillip, probably before you like, we really have. We've desperately needed a forward for 20 odd years. I honestly, when I think about it, the last out and out forward that we had that was really good, you're probably talking like maybe Carlton Cole, maybe Dean Ashton, Carlos Tevez.
I was just going to say Dean Ashton as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking a long time ago. The best forwards we've had have been wingers that we've converted to forwards. So Antonio and Arnautovic, they've probably been the best two since we've been at the London Stadium, and neither of them were signed as forwards. So we've spent 45 million on Hilaire. We've spent, what was it, 35, I think, on Scamacca,
Skamaka, yeah.
25 on Fulkirk. And I just think to myself, gosh, when are we going to get it right and sign a young, 22, 23-year-old forward that's got a future, that can score goals consistently, can lead the line. We know that Antonio worked for our system, so why have we not tried to sign a player that has the same characteristics as Antonio? For Nuno, I think he likes to have a target man. So now we seem to be looking at sort of 6'3" plus forwards. The one we're looking at the most at the moment seems to be Promise David, who's a Canadian international playing in Belgium, and
Just scored, I
that
think.
yeah, he scores regularly. Like he's got a
Yeah.
really good goals record. Yeah, and I think to myself, like, why can we not get this right? And obviously you guys know Hermansen, and we were speaking off air about him. But we signed him for 18 million, and then decided he's no good within like 3 or 4 games. And what club does that? Spends that much on a goalkeeper, and then within 3 or 4 games decides he's rubbish and tries to move him on. And I think to myself, like, what is going on at times? But there are some good people in the recruitment team. Maximilian Hahn is a data specialist. He's very good. Dylan Kernell has worked his way up from academy analysis to being recruitment. They're very good. But I think, unfortunately, you've got David Sullivan, and you've got, for a large period, Tim Stuyton making decisions. And Tim Stuyton, especially, I think, made decisions for Tim Stuyton rather than for West Ham. And that's been a big problem in recent years, but we need to sort it out because we can't keep wasting money, and we'll end up getting relegated. So we've got to get the right players in very soon. We need a new forward very desperately.
Just to add to that, just quickly, what about the whole staff hiring? There must be a bunch of compensation that we're also paying. That's got to be in the millions, I think, for the staff from Potter and Lopetegui and all of his staff, and the people Kyle McCauley, I think, cost, like, if we're to believe most of it, I think about £1 million in compensation also. So that should also be
mate,
quite, yeah.
Yeah, we're spending all this money on staff that we have for, like, we got that, I can't remember what nationality. Well, I think they were both Scandinavian, but we got 2 goalkeeping coaches. I think they were Swedish, but
one Swedish, one Danish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one Swedish, one Danish. Yeah, and we got them in, and they literally lasted 3 weeks or something. Yeah. So we got them from their teams. Would have paid their compensation to get them out of their club, because one of them was at Bromby, wasn't he? Yeah. So we paid that money to get them out of Bromby and whatever the Swedish team was, and then we had them for 3 weeks, let them sign Hermansen for 15, 18 million, whatever it was, and then sack them a month later. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But then when it comes to a manager, like, we won't appoint any manager that's in work. So you look at every manager appointment that we've made recently, Nuno was out of work, Potter was out of work, Lopetegui was out of work, David Moyes was out of work, Pellegrini was out of work, Avram Grant. When you go back to him, Slaven Bilic, none of them have been in employment, and because we won't spend compensation, yet we'll hire all these people, not work, sack them all, and then have to pay compensation. It just doesn't make sense, and this is why, like, I'm not. When we talk about the board and the club on our podcast, I think we're quite balanced compared to a lot of other podcasts and YouTubers and so on. But the one thing that needs to happen, I think, is that we need David Sullivan, if he wants, can still own the club. Karen Brady can still be involved, because they actually, they almost have to be. But I think you have to appoint like a sporting managing director or something that takes more control of these decisions, because there's just so many that just don't make sense.
Yeah, let's just have another quick break, but stay tuned. Okay, let's talk a little about the ownership. So how do you view the ownership overall and the direction the club is heading in?
That's a good question. Obviously, as I said in the sort of previous question, I'm not. We're not the most sort of vocal, bored out, bored out. They must go. We hate them. All that, you like you see on social media. We try to be as balanced as we can, and for probably a long time, we've not supported them, but we've been tolerant of them for quite a long time. But I think just in recent years, when you look at the cheap appointments of managers all the time, as I said, the poor recruitment, the fact that the stadium, we've been there 10 years now and it's not really improved at all. We were told a world class team in a world class stadium, and we got neither of them at the moment. And I just feel like a change needs to happen. I think they've almost come to the end of their time. I can't see West Ham progressing beyond this point now. Like, I can't think, well, okay, we're struggling a bit now, but in 5 years' time, Sullivan would have done this and he would have done that, and we're going to be better. I just can't see that happening. I think there needs to be some sort of change now. It's difficult because they own the club. You can't. People always say sack the board, but you can't sack the person that owns the club. It doesn't work like that. If you own a house, you don't just suddenly walk out the house and give it to someone else, do you? Like you have to. There has to be a process of selling it and so on. So even if they found someone that could be like a chief, like managing director or some title like that, I think that would be a good thing, just so that it's not just David Sullivan and then like the manager type thing. There needs to be more for me in the boardroom that are accountable to these decisions, because Krasinski came in, an absolute billionaire in Czechia, and he doesn't do anything really. I think he just sees it as an investment.
He
You've
seems
got
invisible. Yeah, you just
yeah,
don't
he's
see him.
invisible, mate. Yeah, no one. I wouldn't even if he was sat next to me on a bus, I wouldn't know it was him.
You wouldn't
Like
recognize him.
it's like no, exactly. And he owns the club I support and spend my life talking about. And then you've got David Gold's shares, which are kind of in limbo at the moment. They're not really doing anything with anything. They're trying to sell them, so no one's doing anything with on that side. You've got Trip Smith, the American millionaire. I don't know how involved he is, and so you just need more voices in there, I think, that can make decisions, and a younger group of people, because you've got to think, David Sullivan is late 70s now. Like what went on well in 1980, 1990 in football is different to the 2020s. So I think we need to move with the times and get a younger board in there. And these protests are going on. You've probably obviously seen it, and the
Yeah.
coverage that it's got. And I can understand what they're trying to do. The club that I supported when I was a kid, I started going to West Ham when I was 9 years of age at Upton Park, is very different to the team that I'm taking my kids to now. And I think we need to sort of try to get some of our identity back. And I think a change is needed personally.
Do you fear a relegation in the current ownership?
Yeah, I think so. I think we should be okay this season. If you'd asked me that a month ago, I
Yeah,
would have said, "Yeah, I
different
think we're, I
story.
think we're, yeah, exactly. I think we'd have been banging trouble a
Mm.
month ago." But it seems, two good wins against Newcastle and Burnley, and then a good, although it feels like a loss in some ways, the result against Bournemouth, because we were 2-0 up. It still is a good point away at Bournemouth. If we can beat Liverpool, which I think is a very good time to play Liverpool now, if we can
Definitely.
beat them, then I think we'll be okay. I think we'll finish like 13th, 14th, maybe, something like that. The way I look at it is Wolves, I think, are too far gone now anyway, and I don't think their manager appointment was a good one. And then I think Leeds and Burnley will start to fall away as well. And I think Fulham, I've got my eyes on them. There's always one big club that you don't suspect. I thought it was going to be Brentford, but they seem to be doing okay at the moment. I think someone like Fulham, well, there's always one club that sort of struggles, and I think it could be them. So I think with that in mind, we should be okay. But I don't think it's going to be, unless we have a good cup run, it's not going to be a glorious season for us either.
No. Definitely not. Okay, let's talk a little about your success on the former known as Twitter, now X, and and the whole career you've been building. What do you hope to achieve for the fan base and the community in long term?
So we aim to be the number one place for West Ham news and content. I know that you're patrons, so that you know what we offer. But for those that don't know what we offer, we have podcasts every single day. It's not just me and Dave. We have like different people that do podcasts for us. Some are ex-players, some are like Sam Delaney, who used to be on Talk Sport, in Rashane, who reports for The Athletic. We've got a whole range of different podcasts. We've got different news writers. We've got different content coming. We've also got our YouTube channel. We've got the pre-match events. We've got the podcast. So what we want to be ultimately is the number one spot for West Ham news, other than your Danish podcast. They don't need to go anywhere else to get West Ham content. They need to come just to the West Ham way, and they just need to. That's what we want to be, the number one place. And we like to think that we do a good job of it. We put events on. We've obviously had an event in Sweden. We've got another one coming in February in Sweden, in Stockholm. We've done one in Dubai this year. We've done two in America. We've done one in Australia. We're hoping, we were talking off air to do one in Denmark sometime soon. So we like to do that, and we just want to be the best place for West Ham news, because obviously that's where I made my name. So the best place for West Ham news, but also the best place for West Ham content. And I would, obviously a bit of a marketing pitch here, but I would urge your listeners, if you haven't subscribed to the West Ham Way Patreon, at least give it a go for a month, and then you can cancel if you don't like it. It's only £7 now. I don't know what that translates to in your currency, but it's £7 in England, and I think it's money well spent. When you think a programme at the match is, I think, £4, is it? Last time I checked, a drink in like one beer in the stadium was about £7.50. I'd like to think it's good value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I get I want to talk about your anonymity, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Because for most people who are watching this, there's no picture of you, and you've been anonymous for a long time, and I'm just wonder how you handle that, because you obviously go to the pre-match events, you go to the games, people recognize your voice. How is that whole experience? Don't you get worried? Don't you get nervous? I feel like it's gonna be anxiety inducing being anonymous online with people recognizing you and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Right, you two are very good at this. That was a very good question. So essentially, you're right. It is a worry. When I first started, I was involved in a job, like I said, a 9 to 5 job, where it wasn't particularly good. If people knew I was on a podcast slagging off Tottenham fans, for example, and swearing and talking about some of the things that Dave and I talk about, it didn't mix too well with my job. So that was another reason why I stayed anonymous, to try to protect my job and stuff. But then, as you rightly say, when I started to do podcasts, when I started to do events, people started to recognize my voice, and people think this is a put-on voice. It's not. This is my genuine voice that comes from an illness that I had as a teenager that makes me a little bit short of breath at times. But this is my genuine voice, and it's quite distinctive. And so yes, when people come to the pre-match event, I tend to do the door, like I do the tickets when people come in. So when they say, like, 2 adults or whatever, and I'm like, okay, mate, then they'll go, "You're X, aren't you?" And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And then when we go to away games, obviously Dave isn't anonymous, and he's very distinctive looking. He's 6'5", skinhead, big man, lots of tattoos, and he stands out. And he's very loud as well at away games. So everyone will be like, "Oh, there's that Dave Walker from the West Ham Way." So they'll come up to him, and I'll just be standing there, and they'll go, "Oh, I don't know, I love the podcast. what's X up to? And they'll go, and he'll say, well, ask him yourself. He stood right there, and then they'll go, oh, hello X, how you doing? And because we've been doing this for like, I think we've done the podcast, well, we've done events for 10 years. I think the podcast is probably about 12 years now, if I remember correctly, because we've been doing it that long, that a lot of people do know who I am. So at away games, me and Dave will get stopped quite a lot. We will get stopped quite a lot. And so we've actually got to the point now where we try to time it. I don't mean this to sound arrogant, because I'm not trying to imply that we're like world celebrities, but what we do is we get to the game about 20 minutes to kick off. We go straight to our seat and we sit our seat. We both put our hoodies up. And we try not to be recognised now, because we just want to get to the game and stuff. But when Dave's drunk, like he often is, it's quite hard to get him to his seat quickly at times. So we do get stopped. We like, don't get me wrong, we like being stopped, and we like meeting people, and we like people saying nice things to us and stuff. But so it is a bit weird. But yeah, for me, I probably don't need to be anonymous now. I don't like. There's no reason. Before I was protecting my job. I'm also protecting my kids a little bit. The only reason I do it is for them, because there are some troll people online. They like to say things to people. You see it happen to lots of people. So at the moment, people can attack me for not being accurate at West Ham news. They can attack me for my voice. They can attack me for maybe some of the things I've tweeted or I've said, but they don't know what I look like, so they can't attack me for that. So they can't call me short, fat, and bald or whatever, because they can't see it. But if they could see it, then maybe they would. And also, I try to, like my kids. I go to the game. I've got 3 kids. I go to the game with my eldest daughter. I sometimes go with my son, and I don't want them to ever be sort of have their experience spoilt by that. So that's kind of why I keep anonymous. But sometimes people have taken photos of me at the events, or a couple of times I've been on in the club do a picture of the West Ham fans celebrating a goal and stuff. Sometimes I've been on that one game. Sky decided to just put the camera on me for about 10 seconds and stuff, and loads of my friends saw that and took photos and said, you're on TV. But thankfully, it's never no one's really posted it around much, and if they do, then there's not much I can do about it. But I'd like to think anyone that comes to the event because they like what Dave and I do. So no one there would hopefully want to stitch me up. It's only when I go to an away game, maybe there might be a few people that do. But to this day, since I've been X, not one person, as far as I know, massively stitched me up online. So credit to West Ham fans. And yeah, as I say, I don't really have much to hide anymore, other than trying to protect my kids and from the abuse. But yeah, it was a worry when I first started. It was a worry, but I've got a bit more relaxed about it now.
I would say 13 years doing what you do and still sort of anonymous. That's quite an achievement in these days.
It is. So definitely when we like say when we do the events and when I speak, I go to pretty much every home and away game. So particularly away games, you see the same people over and over again, because it's hard to get tickets for away games. So it's generally the same people, and most of the people at the away games, not those that don't listen to the show, but those that listen to the show and like what Dave and I do, probably know who I am now. And I can tell when people are sort of looking at me and want to say something but perhaps don't. And occasionally you'll be stood next to someone and it will get to about 5 minutes to the end of the game and they'll go, I love the podcast, by the way, mate. and I think I've stood next to you for the last 85 minutes and you've not said anything. And now you say it, it's quite funny. And I've never had to my face a negative word said, so that is a credit to West Ham fans. Obviously online and behind my back I've had hundreds, but to my face I've never had anything said, so hopefully it will stay that way.
So if you ever see me and Phillip in the stadium, just give us a thumbs up so we know it's you.
Yeah. No, like a signal. We need to get a signal.
Yeah. I will do.
Okay. Do you have anything, Phillip, you need to ask?
I think I got most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So, X, we just want to say a massive thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us and the Danish fans.
No, it was a pleasure, mate. As I say, I thought the questioning was great. You're both good lads, and I'm more than happy to come on at some point soon again in the near future, and let's talk about getting an event in Denmark. I think that would be perfect to go out there and meet you guys and meet some of the other Danish fans. So yeah, let's talk about that and hopefully get the ball rolling and get it to happen.
Sounds
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.